When writers are thinking up ideas, they have to decide between what sells and what is meaningful. I'm wondering if you can talk about the process and how you decide on what ideas you want to develop.
I think start with what's meaningful and then make it sellable. Um, because I think the process of making anything takes so long. If you're gonna try and do it in like a commercial environment, there's gonna be notes you're getting, lots of back and forth, lots of stakeholders to manage, all of that stuff. And if you don't care, you're not gonna make it through the end. And you can easily lose your North Star, like your focus. So start, for me, I'm like, if I'm gonna try and show run something and I've only done it officially twice, I think, I've gotta care about it and have like the why I really wanna do this thing, so that when I'm now working with other people, I'm always holding on to that. And I think that's what differentiates your show from other things, is knowing what is meaningful about it, because you can always come back to that, right? So to the what sells pieces, I think sometimes we can observe the industry and be like, okay, this is the zeitgeist, this is what's going on, whatever. But the human experience is generally the human experience. And I think there'll always be a place for the human experience. So if you can find something that can connect with other people, I think it'll always sell, especially if you execute it well. So yeah, I would say start with the meaning, then listen to people whose jobs are audiences. Because I think sometimes as creatives, we fight executives. We're like, and everything is in context, but we're like, you don't know what you're talking about. No, they kind of know their audience. So it's like, what can you learn about their audience, and then how can you find a way to communicate what you're trying to do with that audience? I think for me it has specific relevance because I'm from a small country, Zimbabwe, with I think it's like 12 million people. Some people have never even heard of Zimbabwe, right? And then I specifically want to tell Zimbabwean stories. Working in South Africa, their primary focus was telling South African stories. So I was always like, well, how am I going to get the Zimbabwean story out? I really care about this story. So sometimes I'd have to make decisions to be like, oh, okay, maybe I can make the story one of the characters a South African character, just to get my sell. So casting wise, and go, okay, cool, is it still a universal human experience regardless of it I'm not saying it's from Zimbabwe, but the experience and the meaning, is it still there? So there are things like that where it's like, okay, fine, you might change the setting, but the thing might still connect with an audience. So I had to do that a lot in South Africa, just because the market wasn't looking for Zimbabwean stories. They were looking for South African stories. Same with the US. It's been hilarious because, and actually with this animated project I worked on before with Disney, very specifically African stories that had a lot of meaning, but they needed to make sense to a global audience. So I could be stubborn and be like, no, I want to have it all in my home language, and no, I'm going to have all of these names that people can't pronounce, and no. And then no one wants to make the thing. So I was just like, okay, like, where do we compromise? And there's a little bit of like teaching the audience who you are, and just being like, yeah, no, actually my name is Tendayi. That's just my name. I'm not going to change it to something else. That's the bit you kind of push back on, and then something else you're like, okay, we are a bilingual country, so a few scenes can be in the home language, and then whatever. So I think just being adaptable, and paying attention to the audience, because at the end of the day, whatever you're trying to make needs to connect with an audience. It's not just for yourself. I remember an executive said to me once, if you want to do something for yourself, exhibit in an art gallery. But if you're trying to make TV, that's a different process. So all that to say, if that's what you want to do and you don't want anyone messing with it, there's spaces for that. But if you want to do something commercial, there's a little bit of a tap dance of like finding a way to compromise that doesn't actually sell your soul or whatever it is, but just being considerate of the wider interests, I guess. Sorry, super long answer, but yeah.
Can you provide us an inside look at your writing process?
Wow, I need an inside look into my writing process. I'm like, what am I doing? I don't think there's anything I've ever written that doesn't start from a personal place. I used to actually be very ashamed of like, I was drawing from my family experiences a lot. So I found retrospectively that I'm often my writing is me trying to process something that is a lived experience or a question that I've had. So I don't know, I think something happens physically where I'm like, oh, like I can feel it in my body, the need to say something or explore an idea. So I often have my phone. Before that, I would have like a notebook and just, ideas would just come and I'll just be scribbling on things and just like, it could be this. And like, I'll be writing as though I'm having a conversation with myself. So I'll be like, oh, maybe it could be this. Oh, maybe she does this. And maybe, and so it's just like the raw emotional flow that I'm just kind of putting down, whether it's in a document or handwriting or voice noting it to myself or emailing it to myself. Then I try and gather, there were times when I would like wake up at the same time every day for like whatever period I could sustain that, and start building that out. But I think the thing that made a big difference in my writing process was doing some writing training. And when I first learned about, Hero with 1,000 Faces and Hero's Journey and story structure, and it felt like the Bible. Like it felt like, oh my gosh, this is so helpful. Like it just kind of unlocked something in my brain. So I use that now where definitely I hold space for just the meaning, like the why, what am I trying to say and whatever. And then I actually start to do that and go, okay, outline, right? So what's my setup? And I literally will just beat things out. I definitely write backstories, all of that stuff. But yeah, I think I'm quite a systematic writer now where I start with just the spine of things and just the major like turning points. If it's a film or if it's a series, the major series points. And then I start to beat it out scene by scene and, then I actually start to go into like the cruxes of the scene, and then so I'm pretty systematic. I think and it helps me then iterate because then I'm going, oh yeah, this moment is supposed to be the low of the character, and that's not quite working, and then it gives me a spine to be like just anchors. It just gives me an anchor to be able to move things around. Some of my writing community people do cards and stuff. I think that's a new thing for me, and I'm actually seeing the value in it. I'm starting to enjoy carding stuff. I never used to do that, but yeah, I think I'm a very systematic writer. But I do give myself a moment of just blue sky and free flow.
Just as a side, one great thing about driving in LA and LA traffic, which there's so much, is that you can think of stories while you're just like basically stuck there and not moving and without losing your mind.
Interesting.
And you can actually, if people just think you're talking on the phone, if you're working out a character, she has her Bluetooth on. No, she's working on a character. And so that's the beauty of being in your own car here in LA. So that's more incentive.
So thank you for that to get a car.